Boris Johnson won the race to become Britain's next Prime Minister.
France and Western Europe were Tuesday bracing for a new record-breaking heat wave that is forcing the temporary shutdown of a French nuclear power station and will test competitors in the legendary Tour de France cycle race.
Rappler CEO Maria Ressa's libel trial opened in a case that she and press freedom advocates see as government retaliation for her news site's critical reporting on President Duterte.
U.S. Space Agency NASA on Monday asked American aerospace companies to offer detailed ideas for vehicles that could bring 2 astronauts to the moon by 2024, an American objective that was reconfirmed on the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission.
Mama Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world, thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. First, in the Philippines, Rappler CEO Maria Ressa's cyber libel trial opened on Tuesday in a case which stemmed from a 2012 article that claimed that a wealthy businessman had shady deals linked to illegal drugs and human trafficking, even if there was no evidence that pointed to this. Take a look. The cyber libel case arose out of a story published by Rappler and written by former researcher and writer Reynaldo Santos in May 2012 and updated on February 19, 2014. In the article, businessman William Kang was portrayed as being involved in allegedly shady deals and identified him as the owner of a black vehicle that was used by the late former Supreme Court Chief Justice Renato Corona during his impeachment hearings in 2012. Kang had denied that he was the owner of the vehicle featured in the article and categorically said that he had never been involved in any criminal case. Now, Ms. Ressa and Santos are both out on bail. During the hearing on Tuesday, the Department of Justice presented 2 witnesses that testified that they were able to access and read online the alleged defamatory article first published on May 29, 2012. Rappler CEO Ressa did not attend the hearing but gave an interview where she insisted the libel case against her was a case against press freedom and a violation of her rights as a private person. She said the government hopes to intimidate us by siphoning both my personal time, our resources. Ressa, who was not in court, told international newswire Agence France Presse. Ressa, who was named Time Person of the Year in 2018, claimed she won't be intimidated into silence. She claims the cyber libel law did not take effect until months after the story was published. But government lawyers say it is effectively a new article since Rappler had updated it in 2014 to fix a typographical error. The Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012 was approved on September 12, 2012, and is officially recorded as Republic Act number 10175. Now, because the law allows the filing of charges of up to 12 years after libel is committed, Ressa said it will have far-ranging implications on constitutionally protected freedom of expression as well as the way Filipinos use social media. Ms. Ressa, who has been arrested twice this year, also faces tax and corporate fraud cases, as does Rappler. She claims she and Rappler were being targeted by the administration of President Duterte for their stories critical of him and his administration. But the DOJ said that her libel case arose because the accused violated Philippine laws. Meanwhile, the libel case has drawn international attention, with Canadian Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland and former U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright expressing concern over democratic rights. Prominent rights lawyer Amal Clooney, who joined Ressa's legal team this month, said the case echoed a recurring theme in her work, where journalists who expose abuses face arrest, while those who commit the abuses do so with impunity. The businessman whom Rappler had portrayed as being involved in shady transaction, however, had criticized Rappler and Ressa for trying to hold themselves high above any accountability. He said, "What is their motive? With one click of a button, they destroyed my reputation and endangered my life," Kang said in an earlier statement. Kang said, and I quote, "Rappler, Ressa, and Santos never attempted to obtain my side on the crimes they wrongly imputed to me or fact-check their baseless attacks against my name. I have never had a criminal record." In a statement, he also said, "In the end, the story is not just about an ordinary suit filed by a private and hardworking citizen to clear his name. It is, in reality, a test case on how the Philippine legal and judicial system will fare against the dangerous precedent that is being set by one reckless and irresponsible member of the media and of the online community." Now, Ressa faces 12 years if convicted.
Hong Kong police leads one of the 6 arrested suspects back to the police station after an assault on pro-democracy protesters by suspected triad gangsters left dozens wounded, sparked a firestorm of outrage in Hong Kong. Hong Kong police have detained 6 men, some with links to triads. Senior police official Chan Kin-chu said Monday the men aged between 24 and 54 were held for unlawful assembly and is being investigated for taking part in the attack late Sunday night at the subway station in the Yuen Long neighborhood. Gangs of men, most wearing white t-shirts and carrying bats, sticks and metal poles, set upon anti-government demonstrators late Sunday who had been returning from a huge anti-government march. Medical authorities said 45 people were hurt, with 1 man in a critical condition and 5 others seriously wounded. Critics accused the city's embattled police force of taking more than an hour to reach the site and failing to arrest the attackers who stayed in the streets around the station into Monday morning. But Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam has said police were stretched thin due to the massive crowds and denied accusations that her government colluded with the assailants. The assault escalated a crisis that had thrown the former British colony into turmoil after millions of people took to the streets in waves of protests against an extradition bill that would send suspects for trial in China. More protests have been planned, but the latest violence has fueled fears that China's People Liberation Army may intervene.
Meanwhile, the savage beating of Hong Kong protesters by a mob of triad gangsters has deepened fears about the city's notorious criminal gangs and the use of shadowy hired muscle to defend China's interests. Take a look. At least 45 people were hospitalized after Sunday's attack when men armed with poles and rods assaulted anti-government protesters in the rural town of Yuen Long as they returned from another huge rally. In a city that prides itself on a reputation for safety, the scenes caused outrage and fear. They also offered a glimpse into an underworld that has long stalked the city. For seasoned watchers of Hong Kong and its shadowy nexus of organized crime, the brazen beatings came as a little surprise. Local Hong Kong political analyst Dixon Singh told AFP that, quote, "When the Communist Party of China finds it inconvenient for it to do something, it will use those gangsters," meaning the triads, on its behalf. Now, triads trace their origins to 19th century Chinese fraternal organizations, and most fled to Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan when the communists took power in mainland China in 1949, and revolutionary leader Mao Zedong cracked down on black societies. The nationalists used them against their opponents during the nearly 4 decades of martial law known as the White Terror, when thousands were killed or disappeared. But many triad groups began shifting allegiances in the early 1990s as China embarked on its astonishing economic rise. Beijing began showing an openness to triads during this time, As long as these people are patriotic, as long as they are concerned with Hong Kong's prosperity and stability, we should unite with them, Tao Si-ju, chief of China's Republic Security Bureau, said back in 1993. Now, police sources told the South China Morning Post they believed members from the same gangs were involved in Sunday's violence. And political analyst Dixon Singh again said the Yuen Long attacks were designed to inspire fear and to deter people joining future protests. But that, he said, has created a large backlash and it may backfire. Anti-government protesters are now threatening to hold a rally this weekend in Yuen Long. And Hong Kong is bracing for what could be a 7th consecutive week of political violence.
President Duterte urged lawmakers on Monday to bring back the death penalty as part of his internationally condemned crackdown on narcotics. Buoyed by exceptionally high approval ratings and a legislature dominated by his allies, President Duterte used his annual State of the Nation address to urge action on a key unrealized plank of his tough on crime stance.
We have not learned our lesson. The illegal drug problem persists. Corruption continues. That's the reason why I advocate the imposition of the death penalty for crimes related to illegal drugs. Our citizens have begun to do their part in the war against drugs and through the barangay formation of anti-drug councils and also actually surrendering bricks of cocaine found floating in the sea into our islands. I call this responsibility. However, the drugs will not be crossed unless we continue to eliminate corruption that allows the social monster to survive. I respectfully request Congress to reinstate the death penalty for heinous crimes related to drugs as well as plunder.
To me, it's a big disappointment because hindi ako naniniwala ng solusyon sa droga, sa problema ng criminality, ay death penalty. Pinapatay na ngayon. Bumababa ang krimen. Dumalaki nga yung mga malalaking kriminal na parang walang takot sa batas. Hindi death penalty ang solusyon. Never.
Sa 17th Congress, ganun na rin yung sinabi ni Pangulong Duterte. At tingin ko, dito sa House, dahil supermajority uli, raratsada rin yan. Pero kami maninindigan pa rin, no? In the 17th Congress, 54 kaming nanindigan laban sa death penalty. Dahil sa tingin namin, ako personally, ang death penalty is not a deterrent to crime.
Meanwhile, the push for the reinstitution of the death penalty may not be that easy, as senators are divided on the matter.
I'm not going to follow the president on the penalty. Unang-una, I'm in direct question. Humanitarian kami. I mean, I don't believe in the death penalty anyway because again, like I said, kawawa yung mahihirap sila, walang abogado, sila karamihan at sa sentensya. At even now, makita mo pati yung mga pinapatay, wala akong nakikitang malalaking general or mga malalaking taong pinapatay. Kita nyo, ang dami-daming pinapatay. I don't mean to sound like a broken record. As of today, about 280 extrajudicial killings on board motorcycles.
Pero ako kasi ang posisyon ko sa death penalty, ang mga mahihirap ang apektado, siguro dapat ay tignan muna natin ang sistema ng hudikatura sa atin, na maayos natin ang hudikatura, babigyan ng tamang sweldo mga judges, maayos ang mga korte natin.
I'm not saying that I'm in favor because I'm against the death penalty. So whether it is plunder or drug abuse or drug trafficking, my position remains the same. But I will listen to my colleagues intently on their position on including an additional penalty for plunder and increasing the penalty for plunder. So I listen to their debates and we'll listen to the discussions.
Hindi ko alam, pero sa ang aming tayo sa Miniria, hindi kami papayag na ibalik yung death penalty. Dahilan po sa aming tingin, ang mahihirap lamang ang mapaparusahan because of our very defective justice system.
I-reimpose natin ang death penalty ay lalabagin natin ang ating international obligation sa ilalim ng Second Optional Protocol. At kaya nabitin ng 2 taon ang pagdinig noon. At hanggang ngayon, wala pang maibigay na sagot ang DOJ sa Senado.
Sana tulungan niyo po kami ni Pangulong Duterte sa kampanya laban sa korupsyon sa gobyerno, kampanya laban sa iligal na droga at kampanya laban sa kriminalidad. Gaya ng sinabi ni Pangulo, up to the last day, he will be fighting. Ako po, sasamahan ko siya, makikipagpatayan rin po ako kay Pangulo.
Sa tingin ko, sa akin nga, late na ngayon yan eh. Dapat nung 17th Congress pa na ipasa na yan para wala nang droga talagang maipasok dito. I'm sure matakot na yung mga ibang bansa magpasok ng droga dito dahil may death penalty na tayo.
To other news now, Boris Johnson won the race to become Britain's next Prime Minister, but will face a confrontation over Brexit with Brussels and members of his own party, as well as a tense diplomatic standoff with Iran. The former London mayor easily beat his rival, Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt, in a poll conducted among members of the governing Conservative Party. He's expected to be confirmed as Prime Minister on Wednesday when his predecessor Theresa May formally tenders her resignation to Queen Elizabeth II. It is a triumph for a man who has always wanted the top job. But Johnson, known for his jokes and bluster, is taking over at a time of immense political upheaval. 3 years after the referendum vote to leave the European Union, Britain remains a member after twice delaying its exit amid continued wrangling in a divided parliament and the country on how to proceed. Johnson led the 2016 Brexit campaign and has said the latest deadline of October 31 must be kept with or without a divorce agreement with the EU. Let's listen in.
We're going to get Brexit done on October the 31st. We're going to take advantage of all the opportunities that it will bring in a new spirit of can-do. And we are once again going to believe in ourselves and what we can achieve. And like some slumbering giant, we are going to rise and ping off the guy ropes of self-doubt and negativity.
U.S. President Donald Trump congratulated Boris Johnson Tuesday on his victory in the race to become Britain's new Prime Minister. He said in a tweet, "Congratulations to Boris Johnson on becoming the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He will be great."
Genius or joker, populist or optimist, Boris Johnson has been dividing opinion in British politics for years. But now he emerges victorious from the Conservative leadership race as the Man Party members believe can lead the United Kingdom out of the Brexit impasse, and critics and supporters alike will be watching keenly to see how he handles the challenges ahead. Watch this.
Boris Johnson has been a familiar face in British politics for years. A charismatic, socially liberal unifier to his fans, a blundering populist opportunist to his critics.
Kipper.
His pro-Brexit stance is arguably at odds with his international background. Born Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson in New York, the son of an MEP, the great-grandson of a Turkish politician. Schooled at the elite Eton College and then Oxford University, Boris was ambitious from an early age.
He's the oldest child and said at a very early age he wanted to be world king, and got very angry if he got beaten at table tennis or any other sort of competitive sport.
He made a name for himself as Brussels correspondent for The Telegraph, writing critical articles that stoked Euroscepticism back home. Johnson had previously worked for British newspaper The Times, but was fired for making up a quote.
His relationship with the truth was cavalier. That is to say, okay if it fitted a preconceived idea of what the story was, not very convincing relationship with the truth when it didn't fit the simplistic narrative that he was putting on more or less everything, that this was a threat to British democracy, a threat to British liberties.
Johnson became an MP and then a shadow minister, but was sacked for allegedly lying about an extramarital affair. Best known for his subsequent stint as London Mayor, he often points to his successes in City Hall, like falling crime, house-building projects and the 2012 Olympics. But sceptics cite money-losing infrastructure projects and a slow response to the 2011 London riots. In 2016, Johnson became a leading Leave campaigner and was again criticised for exaggerated claims, notably that Britain would have an extra £350 million a week to spend if it left the EU. The day after the referendum result, he was met with boos outside his home. Following Prime Minister David Cameron's resignation, many saw Johnson as his obvious successor, but he pulled out after losing the support of former ally Michael Gove.
Having consulted colleagues and in view of the circumstances in Parliament, I have concluded that person cannot be me.
Instead, he was named by Prime Minister Theresa May as her Foreign Secretary, seen by many as a move to keep a rival close at hand. But his tenure was dogged by controversy, such as when he suggested that a British-Iranian woman held in Tehran on sedition charges may have been training journalists. Her family deny this and say Johnson's comments made her situation worse. He resigned in July 2018 in protest at May's handling of Brexit. Now, after emerging victorious from a Conservative leadership race that he dominated from the very start, the task of taking Britain out of the European Union falls to him.
Anyone would find it almost impossible to solve this Brexit problem, and I'd have thought it's unlikely that he will, and it probably will be a disaster. But there is a small chance that he, with that extraordinary brain, could pull it off.
With the Brexit deadline of October 31st looming, critics and supporters alike will be looking to see what kind of Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be.
Meanwhile, Britain said it was planning a European-led protection force for shipping in the Gulf after Iranian authorities seized a British-flagged tanker in a dramatic escalation of tensions in the region. Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt condemned Iran's action as state piracy, while at the same time emphasizing that Britain did not want confrontation. Let's listen in.
Because freedom of navigation is a vital interest of every nation, we will now seek to put together a European-led maritime protection mission to support safe passage of both crew and cargo in this vital region. That it is with a heavy heart that we are announcing this increased international presence in the Gulf, because the focus of our diplomacy has been on de-escalating tensions in the hope that such changes would not be necessary. We do not seek confrontation with Iran. We've taken every available opportunity to reduce misunderstanding.
In a ramping up of tensions, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps seized the Stena Impero on Friday in the Gulf Strategic Strait of Hormuz. The move also came 2 weeks after British authorities seized an Iranian tanker off its overseas territory of Gibraltar on suspicion of breaching EU sanctions against Syria against a backdrop of brinkmanship between Washington and Tehran. On Monday, Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said his country is not seeking confrontation with Britain in a message directed at its likely incoming leader, Boris Johnson.
Starting a conflict may be easy. Ending it would be impossible. Whoever starts a conflict, whoever starts tensions, whoever starts a war, will not be the one who ends it. I think it is very important for Boris Johnson, as he enters 10 Downing Street, to understand that Iran does not seek confrontation. Iran wants to have normal relations based on mutual respect.
U.S. President Donald Trump said that chances of negotiating with Iran were dwindling as he cited increasing tensions in the Gulf and blasted the Islamic Republic as the world's top state of terror. Tehran also claimed to have arrested CIA operatives, and U.S. allies announced their own effort to secure shipping in the Persian Gulf in a possible sign of division with Washington. Asked Monday if the U.S. was leaning towards negotiation or conflict, President Trump did little to reassure those who prefer the former in resolving one of the most explosive international crises of the day. He ramped up the rhetoric, attacking Iran's government as a religious regime that is badly failing, and saying the country has tremendous problems economically. Let's listen in.
I think Iran doesn't know where they are. I've been watching and reading a lot of reports, and right now they're a very mixed up country. They're doing very poorly as a country, and we'll see what happens. You know, it's a religious country or religious leaders, but they lie a lot. We did shoot down, unfortunately we had to shoot down a drone. The drone came down, you know how it came down, with a new technology that's actually quite amazing. But we took down one of their drones. Instead of saying, yeah, that happened, they lie. They say it didn't happen. So we have, there's a lot of proof. It's called, take a look at it on the ocean floor. I think very importantly, I read a report today about CIA. That's totally a false story. That's another lie. They put out propaganda. They put out lies. Let's see what happens with Iran. We are ready for the absolute worst, and we're ready for sense too. But we are very geared up, and if they are really the #1 state of terror in the world. It's frankly, it's getting harder for me to want to make a deal with Iran, because they behave very badly. They're saying bad things, and I'll tell you, it could go either way, very easily, and I'm okay either way it goes.
In other news, Moscow denied that its aircraft had violated South Korean airspace, saying its jets had carried out planned drills over international waters. Moscow said 2 South Korean jets on Tuesday approached the Russian aircraft near the easternmost islets of Dokdo, disputed islands controlled by the South but claimed by Japan, where they are known as Takeshima. The South Korean aircraft carried out unprofessional maneuvers by crossing the Russian jets' flight path and threatening their safety, according to the ministry, adding that the South Korean crews did not contact their Russian counterparts. Now, Russia said its bombers did not veer off course and were more than 25 kilometers away from the islands. Officials in South Korea said it was the first time a Russian plane had violated South Korean airspace. An official at the Joint Chiefs of Staff told AFP that South Korea's Air Force scrambled fighter jets amid fired warning shots. But Moscow said that there was no warning fire from South Korea. Otherwise, the Russian jets would have retaliated.
Police in Puerto Rico's capital fired tear gas at protesters after hundreds of thousands of angry protesters take to the streets seeking the resignation of the U.S. territory's embattled governor.
It's something that it's visceral. The emotion that I feel, you know, sometimes I'm taking a shower and I just explode with emotions and I just start crying. This is a calling. This is visceral. This is just a country asking for peace. This is a country asking for justice. And when you've been stepped all over, you just want to feel this energy, and you just want to make a difference. And I think this will happen.
Puerto Ricans are up in arms over alleged corruption involving money meant for victims of Hurricane Maria in 2017, which left nearly 3,000 dead. They are also upset about the recent release of text chats in which Governor Ricardo Roselio and other male officials make fun of journalists, gays, and hurricane victims, among other people. Under mounting pressure, Roselio said on Sunday he will not seek re-election next year and will step down as leader of his party. But he refused to resign from his post as governor. President Donald Trump also weighed in, calling Roselio a terrible governor and saying that hurricane relief funds were in the hands of incompetent people and very corrupt people.
But the governor has done a terrible job, and the mayor of San Juan she's horrible. I think she's just terrible. She's so bad for her people. And I think the government of the United States, I have to be careful. I'm the best thing that ever happened to Puerto Rico, because we did a great job in Puerto Rico. They don't like to give me the credit for it, but we did a great job.
Puerto Rico was already in dire straits even before Hurricane Maria, which laid bare the disastrous state of its electrical grid. An economic crisis prompted the territory to seek protection from creditors under U.S. bankruptcy law, budget cuts, which, among others, or other actions, forced the closure of schools, prompted many Puerto Ricans to flee the island. Combined with the post-hurricane exodus from the island, Puerto Rico lost 4% of its population.
Caracas and other parts of crisis-racked Venezuela were hit by a massive power cut that the government blamed on an electromagnetic attack. The lights went out in most of Caracas at 4:41 p.m. local time, while people in other parts of the country took to social media to report the power had gone out there too. The first indications received from the investigation point to the existence of an electromagnetic attack that sought to affect the hydroelectric generation system of Guyana. That is according to Communication Minister Jorge Rodriguez in a statement on state television. Guyana, a natural region in southern Venezuela, is home to the Guri hydroelectric power station that produces 80% of the country's electricity. The statement, read by Rodriguez, recognized the cut as a national event. The capital was hit by huge traffic jams due to the traffic lights losing power, while the sidewalks teemed with pedestrians walking home as the metro had stopped running. And the news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back.
Huli ng MTRCV ang mag-provide na appropriate ratings sa lahat ng TV.
Let's start with the weather. Because we've just had the hottest June on record, according to the World Meteorological Organization, or WMO, both land and sea surface temperatures were the highest yet record last month, 1.71 degrees Fahrenheit, or that's 0.95 degrees Celsius above the global average. These unprecedented temperatures which surpassed previous highs in June 2016, happened across Central and Eastern Europe, Northern Russia, Asia, Africa, South America, and North Indian Ocean, and parts of the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. Using global data, WMO also says that 9 of the 10 warmest Junes have occurred since 2010. The impacts of these high temperatures include wildfires in the Arctic Circle and unprecedented shrinking sea ice, the UN agency says, while also pointing out that the northernmost permanent settlement on Earth, which is called Alert in Canada, reached 70 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 21 degrees Celsius, for the first time in recorded history this week.
Meanwhile, Portugal requested the loan of 2 water-bombing planes as winds revived massive wildfires in a central region where dozens of people were killed in huge blazes back in 2017. Portugal's Civil Protection Agency had said on Monday morning the wildfires were 90% controlled, but officials said they were fanned back into life when winds picked up in the afternoon. Now, later in the evening, officials said they were making some progress against the blazes again, but that it was slow work. Prime Minister Antonio Costa told journalists during the morning it was practically controlled, but weather conditions did not allow a consolidation of the situation. In response to a demand from Lisbon, the Interior Ministry said Spain sent 2 heavy amphibious aircraft to help fight the blazes, which broke out on Saturday amid scorching temperatures. 39 people have been injured since the wildfires broke out on Saturday, including several firefighters who were hurt on Monday, according to the Civil Protection Agency. Most suffered smoke inhalation, but a civilian was evacuated to a Lisbon hospital with serious burns.
France and Western Europe were bracing for a new record-breaking heat wave that is forcing the temporary shutdown of a French nuclear power station and will test competitors in the legendary Tour de France cycle race. Forecasters predicted new temperatures high in a string of countries, including Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, where the mercury is set to reach 40 degrees Celsius, or that's 104 Fahrenheit, for the first time on Thursday. The same day could also see the all-time record temperature for the French capital, Paris, 40.4 degrees Celsius, where this 104.7 degrees Fahrenheit in 1947 is beaten. And as the Tour de France reached its final week in the southeast of the country, ice, foot baths, and extra water points were on hand to avoid dehydration.
Nous ne devrions pas avoir un afflux massif de personnes, notamment parce que l'épisode de canicule va être aussi de courte durée, moins de 5 jours, et donc normalement c'est l'accumulation de la chaleur au cours des journées de canicule qui aboutit à des excès de passage aux urgences. Quand les épisodes caniculaires sont courts, nous ne sommes moins inquiets que lorsqu'ils sont prolongés comme en 2003. Et par contre, nous demandons réellement d'éviter tout effort sportif et de faire très attention au risque de noyade.
Wildfires in the Arctic last month emitted as much carbon dioxide as all of Sweden does in a year. That is according to the World Meteorological Organization. Referencing the WMO, a UN spokesperson said that there have been unprecedented wildfires in the Arctic since the beginning of June. Let's listen in.
There have been unprecedented wildfires in the Arctic since the beginning of June, according to the World Meteorological Organization. Over 100 intense and long-lived wildfires were recorded in the Arctic Circle. In Alaska and Siberia, some were large enough to cover almost 100,000 football pitches. Unusually hot and dry conditions have contributed to the spread of wildfires. Alaska has had its second hottest June and hit a record high of 32 degrees Celsius, or 90 degrees Fahrenheit, a week ago.
Also, the Canadian Meteorology Service said temperatures hit a record 69.8 degrees Fahrenheit in Alert. That is the northernmost permanently inhabited spot of the planet, less than 600 miles from the North Pole.
WMO says that the northern part of the world is warming faster than the planet as a whole. That heat is drying out forests and making them more susceptible to burn. Wildfires also release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, contributing further to global warming. In June alone, the Arctic fires emitted 50 megatons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. To give you an idea, this is equivalent to Sweden's annual CO2 emissions. In view of the risks, WMO has initiated a vegetation fire and smoke pollution warning and advisory system to harmonize fire forecasting across the globe and to provide a better picture of related impacts and hazards.
The World Food Program warns 1.9 billion Mozambicans, battered by two devastating cyclones earlier this year, are at risk of severe food shortages. Some 1.6 million people in cyclone-stricken areas of Mozambique are at risk of food insecurity at least until September 2019, while 67,500 children are in need of nutritional support, with some 90% of them acutely malnourished, according to recent Integrated Food Security Phase Classification results. The food security situation is expected to further deteriorate during the lean season from October 2019 to February 2020, with 1.9 million people at risk of food insecurity. Cyclone Idai hit on March 14, 2019, leaving 1.7 million people in need of food and an estimated 400,000 hectares of crops washed away just weeks ahead of the main April-May harvest. The mayor appealed to developed countries, who are largely responsible for global greenhouse gas emissions and the subsequent climate change that is believed to be behind such devastating cyclones like Kenneth and Idai.
This is our reality. People now are suffering. They need to rebuild their buildings. Most of them, they don't have resources to do that. They must change their habit. They must understand that what is happening that side is also affecting we here, innocent people. And now we are applying from them resources to rebuild ourselves. And those resources are not taking place yet. So they must understand that from what bad they are doing that side, they are killing people other side.
We are helping them clear land and pay them with food. We are helping them doing small irrigation canals. We are helping them to basically have plant nurseries, do some programs in terms of forestation. These are the things which will develop long-term resilience in the areas where people are settling down.
The current food insecurity and acute malnutrition situation was caused by multiple shocks, the scarcity of rain and pests countrywide. The central zone was severely hit by cyclones Desmond and Idai, the northern zone hit by cyclone Kenneth, and insurgency in Cabo Delgado. This resulted in great agricultural losses, destruction of infrastructures, goods, and disruption of livelihoods. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the best available. The Manila Beijing
ng dilim. Ako ang mata sa sahing papawid. Ako ang dilat sa tuwing ang bayan ko ay tulog ng mahimbing. Ang aming buhay handang ialay para sa
celebrating the 72nd anniversary of the Philippine Air Force.
Welcome back. U.S. Space Agency NASA asked American aerospace companies to offer detailed ideas for vehicles that could bring 2 astronauts to the moon by 2024, an American objective that was reconfirmed on the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission. Now, NASA called the request for input a major step forward for its new moon mission, dubbed Artemis, who in Greek mythology was Apollo's twin sister. The space agency published documents explaining in detail what it is looking for in a lunar lander that will bring the 2 astronauts, a woman, to the moon's south pole, where they will stay for 6.5 days. In May, 11 companies, including sector mainstays Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman, were picked to lead feasibility studies and develop prototypes by November. Also on the list were newcomers such as Elon Musk's SpaceX and Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin. That same month, Blue Origin unveiled its lander project Blue Moon. Now, NASA has provided dozens of pages of specifications that must be met in terms of onboard electronics, communications, and spacesuits. Any company can reply, not just the 11 shortlisted earlier in the year. On the heels of the 50th anniversary of #Apollo 11, we've just issued a draft solicitation asking U.S. companies to help us develop the 21st century human landing system that will land the first woman and next man on the moon in 2024. NASA Chief Jim Bridenstine tweeted, and he added, "We are going." After receiving the responses, NASA is expected to make a decision in a matter of months as to which company will build the lander and how.
"50 years after a mighty rocket set off from Florida, carrying the first humans to the moon, Buzz Aldrin, one of the Apollo 11 crew members, calls for collaboration as new space race begins. Watch this.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engines running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
But I think what is needed now for our country is the next step, space. Alliance.
Small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We can't pay for all of it. We have to learn at the moon by bringing in the other nations that want to really go there for the first time.
Apollo 11, this is Hornet, over. Apollo,
Meanwhile, here's an overview on 50 years of space travel. Half a century has already passed, but the moment moon pioneer Neil Armstrong took his historic first step on the lunar surface is etched in the memories of those who tuned it. Take a look.
Of strategic and political significance, the conquest of space generated intense competition between the US and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. In 1957, the Soviets were first to place a satellite, Sputnik, into orbit. A few weeks later, a dog became the first living creature in space. Laika did not survive the journey. In 1961, Soviet astronaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit the Earth. In 1963, his compatriot Valentina Tereshkova became the first woman in space. In 1969, the Apollo 11 mission made it possible for Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to walk on the moon. In the 1970s, competition gave way to US-Soviet cooperation, culminating in 1972, when the Apollo and Soyuz capsules docked in orbit. In those days, man was also dreaming of Mars. In 1976, US probes Viking 1 and 2 landed on the Red Planet. The following year, space probes Voyager 1 and 2 lifted off on their mission to explore the solar system. In 1981, the era of reusable spacecraft began. This period was marked by disasters for Challenger in 1986 and Columbia in 2003. The Hubble telescope was launched in 1990. In 1998, the construction of the International Space Station began 400 kilometers above the Earth, making long stays in space possible. In 2001, space was no longer the preserve of defense and science. The first tourist in space, American Dennis Tito, relaxed in the ISS. Since the start of this century, new private companies have shaken up the space industry. SpaceX and Blue Origin are developing reusable spacecraft to return to the Moon and, one day, Mars.
That was 50 years ago.
Yep, 50 years now.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
I'm losing my voice. That's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles and we're one with 25.